Bulletstorm is an ambitious first-person shooter from the developer People Can Fly that seeks to set itself apart from the rest of the pack. In Bulletstorm, you play as Grayson Hunt, once a member of the elite military unit known as Dead Echo. Through a rather unscrupulous circumstance involving its commanding officer, he and his team go into self-imposed exile and become a band of wanted space pirates. In the beginning of the game, Grayson seizes the opportunity of revenge against its former CO, which leads to them becoming stranded on the planet Stygia. Despite all the foul language within their dialogue, the characters aren't one-dimensional meatheads, save for one who, well, I'll just say you'll know him when you see him. The story here is pretty solid, albeit fairly straightforward. It's not to say that the story is bad. In fact, I found it rather interesting, and I was pleasantly surprised at how I wanted to keep going just to find out what happened next. Bulletstorm's core mechanic is killing with skill, which involves all manner of brutally awesome executions. With over 130 different skill shots, you'll be finding new ways to dispatch your opponents all throughout the campaign. You'll have a few abilities to aid you in your quest for carnage, the first being a handy kick that will send enemies flying back, which not only gives you some much needed space, but can send them flying into any number of environmental hazards. Next up is the slide, which is pretty similar to the kick, except you slide forward incredibly fast into your enemies, which also sends them flying. Lastly, near the beginning of the game, you'll discover this handy little device called the leash, which allows you to whip an enemy and then pull them towards you at ridiculous speeds. And the fact that they'll usually be screaming their heads off the whole time is a nice touch, and completely justified considering what's happening to them. Not only will all these skills obviously aid you in combat, there are quite a few times during the story where you'll need to use these abilities to manipulate the environment in order to proceed. While Bulletstorm doesn't have a giant selection of weapons, the ones they do have are well designed and a blast to use. One of my personal favorites being the flail gun, which fires 2 tethered grenades that you can then detonate at your will, or further extend your enemy's agony by letting it go off by itself. Each weapon comes with a charge, which is a secondary firing mode with a limited amount of shots. Your default weapon, the Peacemaker Carbine, will rev up and glow orange, ready to fire off 100 bullets at once, turning your enemy into a smoldering skeleton. Most of the weapons and their charges are quite creative and definitely effective. Also, each of them has several different skill shots associated with them. Throughout the story, you'll come across drop kits, which will allow you to upgrade your weapons, leash, or replenish ammo using the points you've earned from skill shots as currency. Since Epic Games was involved in the development, it's no surprise that Bulletstorm utilizes the Unreal Engine to great effect. The game has some great lighting effects, and aside from the Unreal Engine's quirk with loading in textures, they look crisp and clear. There's a nice sense of atmosphere that develops as you discover the story behind this once flourishing planet. The sheer scope of some of the environments are truly a sight to behold, and despite all the carnage, you'll have plenty of opportunities to soak in your surroundings. The sound design here is actually quite good. All of the weapons sound powerful and the skill shots sound appropriately gruesome. The soundtrack has a nice mix of orchestral scores that usually kick in during the action, as well as some ambient themes that do a nice job of adding to the atmosphere. Considering the music used in their ad campaigns, there are not as many adrenaline-fueled rock songs as you might think. Add in the great voice acting and often humorous dialogue, and you have a game with one hell of a presentation. Bulletstorm has a cooperative multiplayer as opposed to a competitive one called Anarchy. You and 3 other players will face off against several waves of enemies that get stronger as you defeat them. Also, each wave requires a certain amount of points to be gained in order to move on to the next one. This also introduces an interesting element, team skill shots. For example, in the single player, you can leash an enemy and then while he's in the air, kick him into some spikes for a skill shot called Voodoo Doll. The team version requires one person to leash and the other to kick. You'll want to get used to doing these as you'll get way more points than you would with a one-man skill shot. It should be noted that there is a persistent leveling mechanic at play here, but it's purely aesthetic. As you level up, you will unlock new costume and weapon skins. All of your weapon upgrades are specific to the level that you're playing and will reset when you start a new level. There is another mode called Echo. While not really multiplayer, it does have online leaderboards. Basically, this mode tasks you with completing sections of the campaign while going for the highest score you can. Personally, I didn't really play this mode very much because it didn't really appeal to me, but also because, at least on the PC version, the leaderboards were pretty messed up due to some people who I suspect fudge their scores more than a little bit. This game does use Games for Windows Live. For some that's a problem, for others it's not. I just thought I would let you know. There is a paid DLC pack available called Gun Sonata that adds 3 new Anarchy maps and 2 Echo maps. I haven't played this DLC, which is why I haven't reviewed any of its content, which leads me to my next point, that while Bulletstorm's multiplayer is indeed fun, I just don't think it has the longevity of its competition as far as the PC version is concerned, due to the smaller player base and the people messing with the Echo leaderboards. And to be completely honest, I don't see myself still playing the multiplayer 6 months from now. Bulletstorm is a fun game with some unique twists on the FPS genre, but ultimately it falls a bit short, which is why I give the PC version of Bulletstorm a C.